Final score from Nissan Stadium, the Dallas Cowboys 27, the Tennessee Titans 13. A spirited effort from the Shorthanded Titans, who sat several starters for a game that had no postseason implications, but they fall to 7-9 ahead of next week's regular season finale in Jacksonville, which will determine the winner of the AFC South. Welcome into Titans Talkback. Lucas Panzica with you alongside Titans great Dr. Kevin Dyson, presented by Lee Company. All you need, visit them online at leecompany.com. Dice, Titans made it interesting. Starting Joshua Dobbs at quarterback gave this team a bit of a spark. Defense forces 2 turnovers, but ultimately just not enough firepower to deal with the Dallas Cowboys, who improved to 12-4 tonight.
It'd be interesting to hear what the callers say, because I feel like this game gives you a sense of hope. And I hate to use that word when you talk about competitive environments, when you talk about playing a game, but it gives you a sense of hope. It gives you a sense that they have a chance next week. If you can play as spirited as they did on defense, minus key contributors, key stars, key Pro Bowl defensive players, and have the production you had on defense. What they have, 80-something plays today, the Cowboys. And then on offense, they competed without their star players, essentially, and still was in this until there to the last couple of possessions of the fourth quarter. It does your heart well to give you a sense that, you got some extra time to prepare. We'll get into Dobbs here in a minute, but you get a few extra days to prepare for Jacksonville as you go into all or nothing, man. Today was a game, and I mentioned it earlier today on 3HL. We put all our chips on the table. We're going to rest our guys. We're going to do our film study. We're going to play hard. We're going to compete. We're going to find out about some of our younger guys, some of our guys in experience. We're going to find out about this backup quarterback that we know little about, put him in the situation, the game. Backup running backs got in, and they competed. However, true to form, though, still got to put up points, still got to protect the quarterback. Can't have all the penalties, and we'll get into that, too, with the officiating. That was something to have a conversation about. But at the end of the day, those are the things that ultimately hurt you. I mean, the Cowboys converted 62% on third down. At one point, they were 8 for 10, 80%. They just didn't convert the last 3, which at that point, they were just trying to run out the clock. So there are some things that you look at if you're looking behind the veil curtain, man, and saying, this is the reason why we didn't win the game. However, there's a lot of good stuff to say we can take and build on this and try to go get this win down in Jacksonville in about 9 days.
Titans compile 317 total yards of offense. They are outgained by the Cowboys 361 to 317. But I guess the biggest thing that you were trying to learn from this game is what you have in Joshua Dobbs, because when that news broke earlier today that Dobbs is the starter over Malik Willis, for some people, I think the default thought was, are they resting Willis? Are they trying to preserve him for the Jaguars? And then you kind of come to realize, no, they think Dobbs gives them a better chance to win. And I think that played out with Joshua Dobbs in his final stat line.
And you mentioned it off air. We were talking about it. I mean, just from a sheer number standpoint, he threw for 200-plus yards today.
He was 20 of 39, 232 yards, a touchdown, an interception. He ran the ball 3 times for 12 yards.
And that pick, that's on him.
Yeah.
He was he'd been protecting the ball, being wise with it up until that moment. And maybe it was the situation. You're thinking, I got to do something. We got to get some points. I'm trying to win a football game. But that was an ill-advised throw. Aside from that, he was decisive. He took what the defense gave him. He was doing checkdowns. He hit a deep ball. He had another one, had opportunity too. There was some jostling. He thought maybe to get a penalty, just like the other side of the equation when the Titans were jostling and they got the penalties against them. So overall, man, I was looking at him like he definitely needs to start next week. Based on that performance today, I feel like he is more NFL ready, and it showed today than where Malik is right now.
Want to get your phone call, 615-737-1045. Your thoughts on Joshua Dobbs' performance, the Titans' performance in a 27-13 loss to the Dallas Cowboys that ultimately is their sixth straight loss, but we'll say it's a different feeling after this game than it was after the Texans game last week. And we're going to hit on everything. The defensive performance, short so many starters, Danico Autry, Jeffrey Simmons, Christian Fulton, Bud Dupree. The list goes on of guys that they did not have today. Zach Cunningham placed back on IR earlier today. His season is over. Yeah. So we're going to get into all of that. We want to hear from you. But before we do that, Dice, I do want to ask you, this game was odd. It was almost a preseason type of feel, right? Because you're playing so many backups. The game ultimately doesn't have any implications on what you're going to do as far as the outcome of your season and postseason implications. And you don't want to be talking about moral victories in Week 17, but it was positive from Mike Vrabel after the game, talking to Mike Keith on Titans Radio. I think you're hearing a lot of positive vibes coming from the players in the locker room. They can't wait to get back on the practice field ahead of that AFC South championship game is what it amounts to in Jacksonville next week. So do you anticipate this performance kind of boosting that morale, boosting that feeling in the locker room? I mean, does that go a long way for you?
Well, I say this. I think if you look at the decision to sit all the guys that did not play today, healthy scratches, right? Starters, Pro Bowlers, all of them were healthy.
Yeah,
it was an evaluation day. I wanted to see who was going to who's going to compete for me when all the chips are in. When we're in this all or nothing game next week, I want to know who I can count on. I want to watch this film and say, okay, I feel comfortable with him. I feel confident with this guy. And again, we talked about the dress rehearsal with Dobbs. He's in that equation, right? Because he's a little-known commodity. He hasn't played substantial minutes as a starter in 2+ years. He's played in
really
preseason.
Never.
Really. And in that's football league, he hasn't. Not since college.
Coming into this game, Dobbs' NFL career over 5 years was drafted in 2017. 17 pass attempts. He had completed 10 of them for 45 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. That touchdown he threw today, the first touchdown of his NFL career. Yeah. And he hadn't taken a snap in a regular season game since 2020.
Right. And this is a guy who looks like a substantial, today anyway, backup quarterback at this point. Now, he looked like he can start in the National Football League. He had a pretty good showing for a guy who has been here with 6-7 days. He hasn't even been here a whole week yet.
9?
Has it been 9 days?
Just over a week.
Just a week?
Yeah.
Yeah, we know he's an engineer mind. He got that brain. But, that's beside the point. He's a smart guy. But, I know all that to say, man, I think when you talk about with Vrabel, his contentment was that the guys competed. They were fighting to the end, and they were in this ball game from start to finish. And there's a few plays here or there that, okay, the penalty get you inside the 5. Another one got you inside the 10, I believe. They scored touchdowns off of those on the PIs.
Yeah.
There's a couple of different things like that. Probably by the rule, those are pass interference. You can't touch a guy and ball in contact, the ball's in the air, things of that nature. But there's a couple incidents like that where you say, if they go a different way, we don't get those penalties, they don't score those touchdowns, what's really happening? To lose by 14 in a game that nobody gave you a chance in, nobody thought you'd even be competitive. Everything is going to be like what we saw with the Chargers and the Broncos the other night when it was a 50 to whatever the Broncos scored.
Rams-Broncos.
Rams-Broncos,
yeah, even worse.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a Rams team
that's not as good, right? And that's what I'm thinking. Everybody was thinking was going to happen tonight, but they competed. And I think you can build upon what you saw today, adding in those guys that got the added rest, and they get 2 additional days of rest to go to Jacksonville, all or nothing. Like you said, that's the AFC Championship game, and we'll see what happens.
6 straight losses for the Titans, but they will have a chance to win the AFC South next week against Jacksonville, and they will get a lot of bodies back. Taking your call, 615-737-1045. Was that enough from Joshua Dobbs for you to see him start in Jacksonville? We go to Jameson in Cottontown. What's up, Jameson?
Good evening, gentlemen. Dr. D.
Hey, man.
You've had a lot of experience in the league. Right now, how do you feel about Joshua Dobbs? Because I feel I played college football.
Yeah.
Never played at your level, but Josh, to me, I was at the stadium at the game. Josh felt loose he felt that he was able to do what he could do. Malik still seems really tight and scared to make those questionable throws. How did you feel about Josh?
Man, I tell you what, I feel like he was decisive. He took what the defense gave him for the most part. He took chances when opportunities presented themselves. He missed some throws, but I say that, and some of the ones I'm thinking of come to mind, he had pressure, so he didn't have balance, so he was kind of throwing it a back foot or not planted, things of that nature. He had the one ill-advised throw there late in the game there for the pick, and that's one of those ones he was like, "Wow," he probably thinking, "Why did I do that?" Just live for another day, throw that away or try to run, whatever. But he was forcing a throw.
Yeah, there was a lane to run there. He had Chestnut kind of leaking open. And he just kind of went for it a little bit.
He just, and that's one of those ones. It's. I wish I could have that back. I'm trying to make a play. I get it. But aside from that, you didn't have any true play that you say, he don't get it. Where you had some hesitation with Malik. And my hesitation with Malik has been his ability to process and make decisions on immediately. And I feel like Dobbs didn't have that. He had a sense where he wanted to go with the ball pre-snap, where you want to call it at the snap, whatever, whereas Malik seemed to be hesitant. And I don't know if it was a fear to make mistakes for Malik compared with Dobbs. And Dobbs like, man, look, I'm playing with house money. Y'all called me. You know what I mean? I'm just going out here and have fun. And he did. He looked relaxed, poised. He made some plays, got his first career touchdown pass that you mentioned. And then, of course, he had the ill-advised throw. But, again, that's to be expected for an inexperienced quarterback who's got, like you said, he doubled his production or he tripled his production, if you will, in one game for a team he's been here for, would you say, 9 days?
Yeah, 9 days.
So there you go.
Midweek last week,
right
ahead of the Houston game.
So, kudos to him, man. That shows a lot about him as a professional. From my standpoint, that shows you the professionalism of a guy who has bounced around of late, hasn't had a whole lot of substantial film or opportunities to come in and play as decently as he did, man. That speaks to the professional that he is, even though he hasn't played a lot.
Yeah, the last time Joshua Dobbs started a game that was not an NFL preseason game, it was the Music City Bowl in that building, Nissan Stadium, a Tennessee win over Nebraska in 2016, after the 2016 season. And I think what you said about him processing what's in front of him, is it that simple with that? Because it's not physical with Malik, right? It's never been an issue of talent, an issue of arm strength, of athleticism. He has all of those things in spades, but it just felt like Dobbs was seeing things develop in front of him at a much more efficient rate.
Yeah, and I think some of that's instinctual too, right? Because everybody's instincts are a little bit different in processing. You're talking about somebody who has been around the NFL offense, terminology-wise, very similar from what he knows in Pittsburgh and to what he's here now, maybe in Cleveland. I don't know what the terminology was in Cleveland. So there's some familiarity. So there is some processing things that he has compared to Malik, who's still learning the pro game and understanding the progressions and things like that versus coverages to where you want to go. So there is that. So even though he doesn't have the playing experience, he does have NFL experience, and you can tell he's a student of the game. Well, he's a bright guy. You can tell that. But you can tell he has studied. Even though he wasn't playing, he was studying the game. And so I think he just needed opportunity. And I'll say this, and if anybody listening, more often than not, guys in National Football League, all of them can play. A lot of them just need the right opportunity in the right situation to be successful. And he's a guy that probably just needs an opportunity to be successful. And today, I thought it was a pretty good quality first start for him. And I don't know how he felt about it. The competitor in him is probably going to nitpick his game, as he should, as a competitive person. But overall, I would think Vrabel and Downing look at that and say, okay, I feel more confident with him with a week under his belt, another week on this offense going into Jacksonville in that environment for all or nothing type of game.
It's Titans Talkback on 104.5 The Zone. Lucas Panzica, Dr. Kevin Dyson with you. We were with you until midnight on 104.5 The Zone, and it's presented by Lee Company. All you need, visit them online at leecompany.com. 615-737-1045. We will dive into some phone calls when we come back. It's Titans Talkback reacting to the Titans' 27-13 loss to the Dallas Cowboys on 104.5 The Zone.
All right.
27-13, the final. The Titans fall to 7-9 on Thursday Night Football to the Dallas Cowboys at Nissan Stadium. Taking your reactions to it. Lucas Panzica, Dr. Kevin Dyson with you on 104.5 The Zone. Brett Batchelor, our producer, hanging out with you until midnight. Hope you're getting home safe. If you're leaving Nissan Stadium, either way, we appreciate you being with us. KD, obviously, a lot of the talk is going to be about Joshua Dobbs and whether or not he's the guy next week in Jacksonville when the Titans try and win their third straight AFC South title. But when you look at some of the things that held the Titans back tonight, obviously how shorthanded they were with the amount of starters that were down. But for the guys that were on the field, the biggest thing that stuck out was the penalties. Yeah. And I know we can talk about the officials, and I know people are going to talk about the roughing call on Monty, the roughing no call on the tackle on Joshua Dobbs on the Titans' next offensive series after that. I mean, the 51-yard pass interference on Trey Avery was just a gut punch that was on 3rd and 19.
3rd and 19.
And it put the Cowboys inside the 5.
Yeah.
And they were able to score. But ultimately, the Titans with 10 penalties for 124 yards. The Cowboys with 3 penalties for 35 yards. We could talk about the officiating, and there are things to be frustrated about. But this has been a bit of a trend this year for the Titans.
Unfortunately.
Every year in the Mike Vrabel era, they've been bottom half in the league on penalties against them. This season, they're in the top 10 on penalties called against the Tennessee Titans.
That is one of those, aside from injuries, where you look at the trend of the season where you're going to say, okay, that was one thing, your goal for 2023, we got to clean that up, right? That's going to be a point of emphasis. Like we can't do anything to kill ourselves, especially with the injuries and things of that nature. We can't afford to put ourselves in situations like they did today. Referees aside, like I said earlier, some of those things are questionable. There's obviously, if you're a homer and you're a fan of the Titans, you're going to look at several of those calls and think they're questionable, and as you should, especially those pass interference and even the roughing the passers, the comparisons of the two. I agree with you. So is that the cause of loss of this game or even to this season? Not entirely. I think the injuries have finally caught up to you. The lack of consistency on the offensive line has finally caught up to you. The lack of consistency in the defensive line and linebackers and things has just finally caught up to you. I think the defense has played probably over whatever the expectation was considering the injuries that they had. I think the guys have stepped up, but they were fatigued. The offense didn't score points this year. They've had receivers out. Quarterback has been out. It's just been one of those years where all those things you've been able to overcome the past couple years are they reared their ugly head this year and you weren't able to overcome them. And now you see this ugly losing streak that this city hasn't seen in a long time. But interestingly enough, you still have a chance to get into the playoffs, even with as ugly as this season has been.
And host a game.
Which I know people are looking at that and like, man, I'd just rather get the season over with. But you get to host a home playoff game in the National Football League. Whether you win that or lose, it's still a home playoff game in the National Football League. There's 18 other teams that don't get that opportunity. Right? So you better enjoy that. If that happens. I mean, they still got to go out there and win. And I've been saying all year long, and I might have to eat crow. I've been saying they had such a head start, they're going to make it. Now here we are. It's one game, all or nothing. But they got to go out there in Jacksonville and do it, man.
We are presented by Lee Company. All you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. Back to the phone, 615-737-1045. We go to Andrew in Nashville. Wants to talk about the Titans' play calling. What's up, Andrew?
Hey, good talk with y'all. I just want to say I think the play calling tonight was best I've seen probably all season. The way and Dr. Dyson, you said it. Kudos to Dallas for learning the offense, but we were moving the pocket around and changing the launch point and really doing innovative stuff that we haven't seen all season. And that makes me think that Todd Downey wasn't calling the plays tonight, but rather Tim Kelly maybe was calling the plays tonight. I just want to hear what maybe y'all think about how the play calling went tonight.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the biggest difference from my standpoint, they seem to be in shotgun a lot more than they did with Malik and Tannehill. I don't know how much of a difference in creativity in the playbook. I think there were some things. We saw a reverse that went for a big play today. We saw some screen game. We saw some variety in the play calling, some very timely calls that we hadn't seen up until this point. I don't know if it was one of those things where Dobbs there's little known about him, so they figured let's try it. You know, they gave him a package. He didn't have to learn as much, and they can add some things as opposed to throwing the whole playbook at him. They can just kind of, here's some stable plays, but here's some things that were put in specifically for this game. You just need to be knowledgeable about and to see what happens. But I don't know about who was calling playing calls or who was, I'm assuming Downey was still making the calls. And if he wasn't, that's telling in itself. That tells you what's going to happen at the end of the season right there. If he wasn't, but I'd be surprised if he wasn't making the calls.
Right, we've been getting, and appreciate the call, Andrew, but we have been getting those all year. If it was a good play call, it was Tim Kelly. If it was bad, it was Todd Downing.
Yeah.
But we talked about it. 9 days that Joshua Dobbs has been in Nashville since being signed off the Lions practice squad. Did you ever have that in your career where a quarterback is signed and then less than 10 days later he's thrust into a starting role and all that communication, that timing has to be? You're shaking your head at me. So what kind of challenge do you think that is for receivers, for offensive linemen to get that timing down for a guy that's been here less than 2 weeks?
And it's a little bit different than when I played 20-some-odd years ago, right? And in the sense of how they can manipulate the rosters. If a guy got signed out the practice squad, he was put on the active roster, but more teams kept three quarterbacks off more often than not, and that third quarterback became the emergency guy who moved up to the number 2 spot, so to speak, and they're still in that developmental stage instead of actually going to pull a guy from a practice squad and putting him in situations like he was today. So, but to answer your question, this is a copycat league. Guys recycle staffs. They put their spin on it based on their experiences, but there's a lot of consistency in terminology. You just have to be able to relate the stuff that's not consistent, to something that you're familiar with. Like somebody may call, I'm just going to give you trips, where another person may say tray or doubles over or something over like that. You know what I mean? Like people have different variables to the same concept, but they just use different speak. You just got to be able to process it and go with it. Now, for a quarterback standpoint, who has to know pretty much what everybody on the field is doing, the biggest thing for me is, and I heard Dobbs make several of these, is the check system. Like, when are we checking in and out of plays? When are we checking from run to pass or pass to run? When are we checking from one side to the other, opposite, or whatever you want to call it? Those are the things you have to be familiar with, because everybody has a little bit different. Where you get to line, you make a simple call, a color number call, that triggers something for the line. You may call, like we used to hear Peyton, Omaha, that triggers something for everybody. They knew that meant something, right? So you have different things that people do differently from that standpoint, specifically because there is so much overlap in the league between coaches and players. So that is where I feel like he had to learn. Now, where I run a double slant flat, curl flat, post, dig route, all that's the same. That's football. You just, how you reading it and how people want you in your protection slide, that's football. But the little intimate details of the game and how the coaches call it, that is the hard part to pick up, and that takes some studying. And for him to pick that up, now how much he had to pick up in a short period of time, I don't know. But that, to me, especially as a quarterback, that would be the hardest part.
This is the League Company Titans Talkback on 104.5 The Zone. The Titans trust their home stadium to League Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They can protect your home, too. Your next play, visit LeagueCompany.com. League Company, all you need. Breaking down the Titans' 27-13 loss to the Dallas Cowboys. With the 9th loss of the season, it does ensure the first ever losing season in the Mike Vrabel era for the Tennessee Titans. They could win next week in Jacksonville, win the AFC South, but still finish with an 8-9 record heading into the postseason. But certainly the vibe much better after this performance against Dallas than it was last Saturday on Christmas Eve after the loss to the Houston Texans. Doug in Hendersonville chimes in on Titans Talkback. What's up, Doug?
Hey, how are you guys doing this evening?
Doing well.
Doing well, man.
Hey, I enjoy your insight on the game. Watch this. I'm a glass half. I'm a full guy, and there's like 4 plays that this game could have been very different. This is Dallas Cowboys that came into Nashville, and we played with a limited roster, and the game was still in doubt going into about 9 minutes into the fourth quarter.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the Cowboys just let their foot off the gas or not. But granted, we I don't know anything. I don't know football like you guys do, but I listen to you guys, and we all know about the roster problems. We all understand all that stuff. But we were in it to win it with a bunch of guys that we have no idea. We didn't know their names 14 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the call, Doug.
Yeah.
The Cowboys came in, Dice, a top 3 scoring offense in the NFL, top 5 and third down offense in the NFL, and the number 2 red zone offense in the league. Also with the best turnover differential in the NFL at plus 12. They forced more takeaways coming into this game at 30 than any other team in the league. Well, that's one area the Titans did win tonight.
Yeah.
3 turnovers forced, 1 given up. But Kevin Byard, man, with 2 interceptions in the first half, really willing this defense.
Yeah. And they just put up 37 against the Eagles.
Let me double check, but that sounds
right.
right. It was a win against the Gardner Minshew-led Eagles. 40-34 was the final.
40 points against one of the best, statistically, one of the best defenses in the National Football League. And truth be told, of the 27, you'd say probably 13 of those are legit drives that they went and made like first downs. They got the penalties. They got short field on one, things of that nature. So, man, yeah, he's right. They competed with a bunch of guys, and I think that's why I feel like Vrabel, he didn't have his typical response and standoffish after a loss like he normally standoffish.
Yeah.
After a loss. No, I think he was positive. I think he was pleasantly surprised and pleased. I think he's optimistic. I think he's like, okay, I think we can work with this. Seemingly, hopefully, they have turned a corner. I think you saw some energy. I don't know if it felt like there were so many Dallas fans in the crowd that they felt like the world was against them, but Byard, them guys on defense play spirited. Just a few penalties killed them at the end of the day. And offensively, it was kind of the same thing. It was a few penalties here, unable to convert some short fields when they did get the turnovers. There was a couple times when that happened. It's just little things here and there. But again, that's the negative stuff. If you look at the positive, there's a lot to be able to build on. And I think that's going to be the key this week. Let's build on this because I think we can do something with it, whatever that is for them from their perspective.
Joshua Dobbs' first career start in the NFL, 20 of 39, 232 yards, a touchdown, an interception, a QB rating of 67.5, 3 carries for 12 yards as the Titans fall 27-13 to the Dallas Cowboys. Lucas Panzica, Kevin Dyson with you. Titans Talkback presented by League Company on 104.5 The Zone. League Company, all you need. Visit them online at leaguecompany.com. We go to Brent in Kansas City joining us on Titans Talkback. What's up, Brent?
Good evening, gents. Hey, real quick, before I get into my question, I want to go ahead and clear the air and silence some doubters. As a Tennessee native and a resident of Kansas City, Missouri, I can confirm that Memphis barbecue is way better than Kansas City. Hands down, not even close, not up for debate.
There you go. For those that were wondering.
So my question for Week 18. All right, Josh had a real nice game tonight. All right, so Coach Mack always says you can't manufacture experience. Malik has more experience in this offense, the way that we run football, but Josh has more experience overall. So my question is, which one outweighs the other? And if you don't mind, leave me on hold so I can hear your response, because we don't pick up 104.5 out here in Kansas City. And I just want to hear your response and tighten up, brake pedal.
Thanks for the call, Brent.
Yeah, I'm also one of those like Coach Mack. There's something to say about experience in the National Football League. In some positions more than others, I think it's very evident. I think you can be somewhat successful as a defensive end without the experience compared to maybe a left tackle or even a quarterback, right? You got to have those experiences. And I think those, because situations come up where that experience is crucial, right? I think comparing the two quarterbacks tonight, and if you just go on based on game time experience enough, they're not in the same. And I say this because I know Dobbs hasn't necessarily started in the National Football League before, hasn't had a lot of game experience, but he's been in the league a lot longer. He's been in the league. He's been around pro style a lot longer. He's been, like you said, for 5 years, he's been in the game. So his experience, although it's not necessarily playing, not necessarily getting the reps on the field, he's a consummate pro. He is a professional. So he's been preparing himself like a starter and being a pro, even though he hasn't got the experience. And that, to me, that was what was evident, was his quote-unquote experience compared to where Malik is as a rookie quarterback coming from a college-style type offense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because Malik, coming into this game against Dallas, Malik had attempted almost 3 times as many passes as Dobbs has in his NFL career.
Right.
So you look at the numbers and you think on paper, well, yeah, Malik Willis is the more experienced player. He's throwing more passes in NFL games. But Dobbs has been in these systems. He's been in these meeting rooms, drafted in 2017, even going back to his college career where Joshua Dobbs is playing against future NFL talent in the SEC compared to what Malik Willis was facing at Liberty and the offense he was running. So, yeah, it's kind of that hidden experience that you don't see. And Dobbs, you heard talking to the media, it was carried on Titans radio on the Locker Room Report, talking about preparing every week like you're preparing for an algebra test. You're studying for the test like you're taking it that week, and then you get told at the end of the week, no, you don't have to take the test this week. But you just keep preparing for it.
Well, think about some of the quarterbacks he's had experience. He's been behind a Hall of Famer, Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
Think about what he's been able to learn and process by watching him every week. For how many years was he in Pittsburgh? 2, 3?
He had 2 stints in Pittsburgh.
2 stints.
And so he was in Pittsburgh. I'll pull up his career right now. But he was in Pittsburgh the first couple of years of his career. He was signed by Jacksonville, was in Jacksonville for a year, never took a snap for the Jaguars. So here it is. Was in Pittsburgh, 1 year, the 2018 season. Then he goes to Jacksonville in 2019, doesn't play in a game, comes back to Pittsburgh for 2020, 2021. He's signed by the Browns. He's on the Browns roster until Deshaun Watson's suspension is up. And then he is picked up by the Lions practice squad and then here with the Titans.
And I think
his third team of the season.
I think he opened some eyes today with what he did today. I think anybody would think a lot about keeping him as a potential, I don't know if starter, maybe. I don't know about starter yet, but definitely in that number 2 spot.
Well, that's a good point. Dobbs may not have only won the job next week, but he might have gotten himself a job, whether it's here or elsewhere in 2023. 615-737-1045. It's Titans Talkback on 1045. The Zone presented by Lee Company. Facility managers need a reliable partner for their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical needs. They trust Lee Company's 24/7 service and their team of experts. Your next play? Visit LeeCompany.com. Lee Company, all you need. Lucas Panzica, Dr. Kevin Dyson, with you until midnight on 1045 The Zone. We go to Ashley in Portland, joining us on Titans Talkback. What's up, Ashley?
I went to my first game of this season this year. I've grown up watching the Titans with my dad. I was at UT the 4 years that Dobbs was at UT, so super excited when he got the start tonight. I thought he did well. But one thing my dad has taught me and that I agree with, and I know you guys would too, is defense wins championships. And all year we have seen our Titans defense work their butts off and really not get rewarded because the offense really hasn't produced anything. Tonight was no different, but I just wanted to talk about Kevin Byard and what he means to this team and how, he broke the franchise record for interceptions tonight, and how, he's not quitting. Like, he's seen the high of the Titans, when we had the AFC number 1 seed, and here we are in what feels like the low of Vrabel as the head coach. So just wanted you guys to kind of comment on his performance tonight and really all season and his career as a Titan, and I'll hang up and listen.
Thanks for the call, Ashley.
Yeah, you know what? Of all the starters that didn't play today, I was pleasantly surprised that he was the mainstay. Now, I know they had some injuries in the secondary and things of that nature, and maybe they had a conversation with him like, do you want to sit out? You want to play? I don't know, given he's a captain and what he means to that defense, and he's not battling the same sort of body ailments as like Big Jeff and all these other guys are. But I was a little bit surprised that he was out there every snap today because what he means to the team. But he went out there, performed well. He had a beat on what Prescott and the offense was doing. The first pick was a nice little surprise to him, but that second one, he read that all the way and jumped in front of the receiver and got him a nice little pick and almost took it to the house. So he means a lot to this franchise and to this city, man. He's just a classy, professional athlete, man, classy guy who you can tell he prepares every day, plays hard, smart, but he's one of those guys, if they're going to win this game on Sunday, they're going to need his energy. They're going to need that leadership, and I'm sure he'll bring it on next week.
Kevin Byard is the biggest leader in that locker room, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think there's much of a question about that. I mean, that guy's always front and center with the media each and every week, talking this week about we have to win this game. Obviously, the Titans don't do that. They fall 27-13, but surrounded by guys he hasn't really played with all year with a few exceptions. Andrew Adams, by the way, injured, and we'll find out more about his injury down the road. He was ruled out. That didn't look like a good situation in the second half, so that's another hit to the Titans' safety depth. So that does speak to Byard's performance as far as the turnover that's been happening around him, and he ends up with 2 interceptions tonight. Speaking of defense, it is time for the Kroger Sacks for Cash. Tonight, the Titans had 1 sack. Another was taken back due to a penalty, a holding in the secondary, but the Titans officially finished with 1 sack. It was split by Tier Tart and DeMarcus Walker. For the season, Kroger's donation to Second Harvest Food Bank of Middle Tennessee now stands at $4,500, courtesy of the 1 sack tonight. Every time the Titans sack the opposing team's quarterback, Kroger donates $100 to Second Harvest Food Bank of Middle Tennessee from Kroger. Through its Zero Hunger, Zero Waste plan, Kroger is committed to ending hunger in our communities. Taking your calls on Titans Talkback here on 104.5 The Zone. League Company, all you need. Visit them online at leaguecompany.com.
You know what's interesting, another quick stat, and talk about Dobbs again. 22 of his 38 attempts went to receivers.
10 different receivers.
And I'm talking about wide receivers. So his wide receivers, Burks, Woods, McMath, and Westbrook-Akine had 22 targets between them. We hadn't seen that kind of production in numbers to the receivers all year long.
And then Chigakonkwo was involved, especially early.
And to the tight ends, he had 11 attempts. Yeah. So 33 of his 38 attempts went to tight ends and wide receivers. My point is, we hadn't seen this many targets to the receivers. Brooks had 8, Woods 9, McGrath 2, and Westbrook-Akine 3. We hadn't seen that kind of targets to the receivers all year long.
That's a great point, even with Tannehill in there.
Mm-mm.
Burks finishes with 4 catches, 66 yards. Couple of drops tonight. One on Burks over the middle on a good ball from Dobbs would have been a big chunk play.
Yeah.
Another on Woods early on, a third down that maybe you could say it wasn't the perfect throw, but one that a veteran like Robert Woods has got to bring down. So, Josh Dobbs, we've been throwing out his numbers all night, 232 yards, 20 completions. Could have been a little bit better, just at surface level if you convert some of those.
And Vrabel said it. He's like, it was good, but it could have been better. Like we had a couple guys that need to help the quarterback out, but they made some plays. They missed a few. You know what I mean? It's just, and that was the nature of the game. It was just they made some plays and they gave up some or missed a few, and that's why ultimately they ended up losing. But it didn't feel like it did against Houston. Mm-hmm. It didn't feel like it felt against Cincinnati. It didn't have that same kind of like, oh my God, what's going on here? It felt like a competitive football game that didn't have enough juice at the end to compete and win.
Taking your calls on the Lee Company's Titans Talkback. Lee Company, all you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. We go to Evan in Lebanon. What's up, Evan?
What's up, guys? I was just going to see what you guys thought. So, obviously, tonight was a showcase for Dobbs, and obviously we have a ton of Vols fans, and I was going to kind of try to compare it to your career, KD, in Utah, but you could only do that with basketball, I guess, if you went pro in basketball. But as a player that played for the Vols as Dobbs, and then going to the Titans, this next game, what could that do to the fan base? Could it hurt or help him? And what would that do for other? Obviously, it would help him for other teams in his showcase. But what would it do for the fan base in Tennessee?
I think what's always interesting, especially in I can only make reference to Tennessee and the UT Vols, is there's a love for that Vol Nation out here, right? This state is orange in a lot of respects, right? And if you draft or pick up a free agent from the Vols, immediately they want him to be the starter. They want him to be the starter just like he was when he was in Knoxville. And so I think ultimately there's a lot of people rooting for his success, especially here, because he's an adopted Tennessean, adopted guy of all these communities. He has some success at UT. Everybody kind of wants him to do well, and he's a good guy. He's a scholar. He's a guy who just humble, who just has earned his way to this point, and I think people just root for that. And I think ultimately, even like Kevin Byard, a guy who played right down the street in Murfreesboro, I think there's something to say about a guy who is around this community and is familiar with the area that you just kind of root for. You know what I mean? Because unfortunately, it doesn't happen a whole lot. People go from place to place. You look at UT's roster, they got guys from Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Texas, California, New York. They got players from everywhere, and then they go on, if they're fortunate enough, to go to 32 cities, the International Football League. So having a guy like Dobbs come in tonight, get his first start in a state where he's had some success, I think that's a special moment that can somewhat be overlooked. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that will really root for him to have some success tonight.
I'll say this, as a University of Tennessee grad who was in school when Joshua Dobbs was playing for the Vols, there were a few moments tonight where I kind of had to almost pinch myself. Like, Joshua Dobbs is really the starting quarterback for the Tennessee Titans tonight. Right. I can't imagine telling that contingent of Titans/Vols fans that, in the summer or something that would happen this season. But that is a good transition here to the Eurofix look ahead as we look ahead to next week's opponent. Let me remind you that Eurofix repairs everything European that you drive and below dealer pricing. ASE certified technicians, a local company that has serviced Middle Tennessee for over 2 decades. Visit EurofixOnline.com. Next week, the Titans hit the road to Jacksonville for the regular season finale in what ultimately will decide the AFC South champion. Titans on a 6-game losing streak. The Jags are hot. Doug Peterson says they won't rest anybody. Kevin Dyson, Joshua Dobbs, said to the media today he learned after the Texans game that he will be starting this game. Do you see any scenario where Dobbs is not the starter in Jacksonville?
It'd be hard pressed for them to go ahead and go back the other way, man, especially after we saw today.
Joshua Dobbs looking likely to lead the Titans against the Jags for that rematch. Titans will have reinforcements. Derrick Henry, not Bud Dupree. He was placed on injured reserve earlier today, but several starters, Amani Hooker, Christian Fulton, Jeffrey Simmons, Danico Autry, especially on the defensive side, that you can expect to come back. But that'll do it for us on Titans Talkback. Titans fall 27-13 to the Dallas Cowboys, and Titans radio coverage is produced by Philip Noel and Brad Willis, studio producer Joseph Hunkapiller, promotions director Rich Ferris, director of sales Hunter Rice, general manager is Allison Warren, operations managers Charlie Cook and Paul Mason, executive producer Rhett Bryan. For Kevin Dyson, our producer Brett Batchelor, I'm Lucas Panzica. Again, the final, Cowboys 27, Titans 13. Happy New Year, everybody. And we will talk to you when the Titans travel to Jacksonville.
Yes, sir. Tighten up.